What's up, Porsche fanatics? Will here with Rennthusiast, my YouTube channel centering on air-cooled Porsche 911 ownership. And in today's video, I'm going to be taking you through the 6 reasons I think it is much preferable to buy an air-cooled Porsche from a private seller. I have been thinking about doing this video for quite some time, but I've been a little bit hesitant just because I don't want to alienate the dealer community. I will throw out a little disclaimer on the front end of this video. I am sure that there are fantastic dealers out there. When I think of dealers, I do think of like Porsche dealers, right? Like the manufacturer dealers. I have zero experience buying classic Porsches from them, so that's my first disclaimer. Also, you know, I want to say that I'm sure there are great brokers, consignors, dealers out there, you know, boutique dealers out there. I haven't had a lot of really good success buying from those folks, both in the Porsche world and in other car brands I've bought. So there's that. So in today's video, I'm going to be taking you through the 6 reasons. I'm going to start with kind of the most positive reason that I prefer to buy from private party, all the way to the most kind of critical or cynical. So I hope you stick around for all 6. If you're in the market, I hope you find something valuable here. If you have any questions or experiences along any of these lines, I would love to hear from you in the comments. If you feel like I'm totally wrong and dealers are the way to go, then I want you to tell me in the comments, right? If you have experience with a private party that was very, very negative, leave it in the comments. A little bit of background, I own 3 air-cooled Porsches. I have an 86 3.2 Carrera Coupe in Guards Red. I have a 95 993 in Polar Silver sitting right behind me. I also have a 92 964 C2 manual coupe in Amazon Green Metallic that's not currently in my garage. It's at my mechanic's shop, and I'm dealing with a rather serious transmission problem on that car. So these are 3 of the Porsches that I currently own. I've owned a 997 911 Turbo that I sold, and then I also had a 997.2 C4S in Meteor Gray. I've sold that car as well. So I have some experience buying and selling these cars, and I share that with you only to say, hey, listen, I've been around the block in terms of buying these cars. I've bought mostly from private sellers. I have bought from a dealer with that 964, and then even before my Porsche days, I dealt with kind of smaller boutique dealers, and so you know, again, I have experience in all of this. Let me talk to you about each of the 3 that I have now, my purchase experience, where I got them, and then we'll get into the 6 reasons I think it's better to buy from private sellers. So the 86 I bought from the PCA Classifieds. A gentleman that owned it, I believe, for about 7 years. He and I developed a rapport, bought the car almost a year and really almost 2 years ago now, and he and I are still in touch. It has been fantastic to feel like, you know, hey, I'm still connected to the person that owned the car, that treasured the car. Every now and then I'll send him pictures of the car, and we just, you know, we're still in touch. This 993 I bought from a private seller. I found the car on Rennthusiast, and 2 years later, I'm still, you know, friends with the guy. I would say we text at least, and that's very, very cool. The 964 I bought from a consignor, and I definitely don't feel as good about my purchase experience there. Now, before I get into the 6 reasons I think it's better to buy from private sellers, I do want to acknowledge that it is a tough market to buy an air-cooled Porsche 911 in right now. Prices are absolutely insane. I mean, some of the numbers I've seen on cars that are just like mine compared to what I paid for mine 2 years ago are it just blows my mind. So I realize, you know, if you're really hot and heavy in your search, beggars can't necessarily be choosers. The good dealers out there, and when I say good, what I mean is they're really good at acquiring good inventory, elusive, exciting, rarer Porsches. You know, they seem to kind of be holding the cards, a lot of those sellers. It's hard to find private sellers that have really, really good examples right now that aren't asking obnoxious prices. And, you know, another thing I'll share with you that I'm seeing is when good cars are offered by private sellers, they're getting bought like instantaneously. So before I get into my tips or my thoughts today, I do want to acknowledge that. So, you know, I'm not unrealistic. It could be that if you find the right 911 for yourself and it happens to be the dealer, you know, you may have to kind of deal with that. I will just say protect yourself. It's easy to get hurt. It happened to me, and I'm a pretty seasoned car buyer. Let's now get into the 6 reasons I think it's way better to buy air-cooled Porsche 911s from private sellers. Reason number 1 that I think it's better to buy air-cooled Porsches from private sellers is this. For me, I like to feel like I have some level of relationship or even friendship with the seller of the car that I'm buying. As I shared with you, I have had that experience with both of these cars behind me, and I know for me, I really like to feel good about my purchase experience. Now, I'm a little bit neurotic this way, but I tend to start to look for things like, hey, where am I getting taken advantage of? Or is there something being hidden on this car? And I feel like when you're dealing with an individual, a private seller who especially has owned the car for a long period of time and treasured the car and can tell you about that, there's just, at least for me, something more positive. You just don't feel like there's been anything hidden. And even if there is something hidden, it just doesn't sting as bad as when you deal with the dealer. Of course, I'm just gonna say this, whenever you buy these cars, they're gonna need something, all right? My 993 needed some work done on sensors and that kind of thing, and I ended up, having the engine dropped. But I didn't ever feel like the seller hid anything, and I just think it was time, and I think a large part of that is because I was able to kind of develop at least a rapport with him, and he and I stay in touch to this day. The 86, the same thing. Like I said to you earlier, I'm still in touch with the seller of the 86. In fact, he and I had a nice 20-minute conversation just the other day about his SC and what he's been working on with his Air Cooled, and we're talking about a rally we're going to in the fall together. And so for me, there's just something so positive, so cool, feeling like I'm connected to the human side of the car that I have bought. So that's reason number one. I think it's preferable to deal with private sellers, is that you're able to develop some level of relationship with the individual. Reason number two, I prefer dealing with private sellers. You're able to kind of see how they treat their other stuff when you either look at pictures they send you of the car or when you go on site to view the car. I think the way somebody keeps their garage tells you a lot about the car you're looking at in terms of how they treated it, right? Is it clean? Is it tidy? Is it organized? Or is it messy? Is it dirty? Because you know what? If you're looking at their garage and you're seeing that that's kind of how they live their life, then you're going to conclude that maybe that's how they've treated the air-cooled Porsche that you're looking at right now. So I think that the context of the seller's house, that private seller's house, is going to give you some clues about what you can expect from the car that you're looking at buying. Of course, you go to a dealer, everything is shiny and new and it looks really good because they have fantastic detailers and their social media presence is second to none, and all that good stuff that we know that dealers are good at doing. They're good at merchandising. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, of course, you want to put your products in the best light. But, for me, when I deal with a private seller, I'm able to go and kind of get an authentic view of how they've treated the car, how the car's stored, and all that good stuff. Another kind of pro tip, too, you want to start to look around to see, hey, do they have other Porsches? Do they collect Porsche paraphernalia? How big of a fan are they? Or is this somebody that's kind of like a flipper or a short-term owner? So anyway, that's reason number two that I think it's better to deal with private sellers, is you're able to see the car's natural habitat, if you will. Reason number three, I think it's preferable to deal with a private seller when looking for your air-cooled Porsche 911. For me, want to know the story of the car. And of course, that does tie into the idea of documentation and maintenance history and repairs and accidents and all that. And of course, the more the better when you're looking for that kind of information. But when I talk about the story, I like, and this is just me, maybe this is a little bit sappy, but I want to know how the car was used. Was it like treasured and treated like a member of the family, right? Was it, hey, I took the kids to get ice cream every Sunday in this car until they moved out of the house? Or, you name it. I like to understand the intrinsic story associated with a car when I'm evaluating it for purchase. I know that's not going to happen with every single private seller you're dealing with, but at the bare minimum, you get a sense for like the reverence the person has for the car, and you're just not going to get that when you're working with a dealer. Reason number four, I think it's better to deal with private sellers versus dealers when buying air-cooled Porsche 911s. In my experience, private sellers will generally stay in touch with you after you have bought the car. They will answer questions for you. You can develop kind of a text rapport and send them pictures and ask them things about the car that you've stumbled upon. Like when you buy the car, it's not just, hey, turnkey, and you're gonna look in your rearview mirror as you drive off and you're not gonna need any further information. I have found it's nice to be able to call somebody or text somebody and ask them, hey, what's this bolt I found in the ashtray? And they can say, oh yeah, it goes to it goes behind the USB port in the dash that I installed. I meant to mention that to you when when you pick the car up, you know, that kind of thing. And in my experience, a dealer just lacks that institutional knowledge. They lack that connection to the car. And frankly, they're just kind of like, they're there to turn units and move on. And so when you deal with a private seller, you're much more apt to get, you know, post-sale support from that individual. Reason number 5, I think, is preferable to deal with a private seller when looking for your air-cooled Porsche 911. In my experience, they tend to be a little more reasonable and a little bit more negotiable when it comes to price. Now, caveat is this market is insane, and I just don't see air-cooled Porsche 911 sellers who don't know what they have. I mean, everybody's heard of Bring a Trailer now, you know, and everybody's familiar with PCA classifieds, and they're seeing the asking prices on these cars. But that said, I have seen private sellers be more reasonable. I think that, you know, this is not certainly the norm, but those sellers who believe that their car, their beloved car, is going to go to somebody who's really going to take care of it, they're more apt to be reasonable in their negotiation, both on price and just how flexible they'll be in holding on to the car for you and that kind of thing. Dealers, on the other hand, tend to be really inflexible on their pricing, especially in this market. You know, there are 5 guys standing in line right behind you who are looking to buy that same car you're looking to buy, and so frankly, they just don't have to negotiate. They can simply take orders, and so I think that, you know, again, I'm not unrealistic. It could be that you end up having to deal with a dealer, but I've just found that private sellers are a little bit more negotiable with their price. Okay, the 6th and final reason that I prefer dealing with private sellers when it comes to buying an air-cooled Porsche is that dealers are really pro-level at kind of keeping their costs on a car low and maximizing the profit. So what does this mean to you, the buyer? They aren't going to put the car on a lift and go through it and fix every little thing that it's going to need. In fact, they're going to be really good at shining it up, cleaning it up, making it look really good. They're going to be good at writing up marketing copy about the car. And, you know, they're going to look to maximize the profit. And I'm a business guy. Like, I totally understand the need to conduct business profitably. In my experience, though, I think, you know, dealers are really good at burying problems, or, you know, just conveniently looking the other way when something's a little bit amiss, and then you turn around as the buyer and you've got this big problem in your lap. I've just not found that to be the case in buying cars from private parties for whatever reason. I have a friend of mine who sees this the same way I do, and we laugh and we say that a dealer or a broker or consignor's kind of biggest asset, it's not the cars they're selling, it's the quality of their detailers, it's the quality of their photographers, you know, because at the end of the day, they're just going to try to put the car in the best light. Are there dealers out there that will fix issues on cars before they turn them and put them in the market? For sure. Again, I don't want to generalize and say that every single dealer is looking to squeeze out every single drop and screw the end buyer, but I am saying that when you see these beautiful storefronts they have, you got to ask yourself who's paying for it. It's you, and it's coming out of that margin they're making on these cars. So, you know, again, I don't mean to be too hard on dealers and that whole industry, but again, for me, I have just had more success buying air-cooled Porsches from private sellers. So there you have it, the 6 reasons. You know, if you're in the market, I hope you found some value here. Some of this stuff is a little bit of a, you know, no-brainer stuff, but it is all experience-based. So if you have any thoughts or questions, please leave them in the comments. Happy to you know, speak to them. And if you know of top-notch dealers or brokers, I mean, feel free to share that in the comments as well. You know, I'm trying to be as objective as possible. So if you're still with me, I appreciate you watching, and I hope to see you next time.